There's this guy, James Willing. He was born in 1750 as the youngest sibling in the Willing family. There aren't any portraits made during his lifetime, but he probably looked something like this. During his early 20s, Willing would establish a business in Natchez. However, Willing wasn't the best for finances, and he would have to close up shop there. But he would soon be back. You see, Willing had been an early proponent of American independence. He tried to encourage local Mississippians to fight for the American cause. He failed. In 1777, James Willing lobbied Congress to be able to command an expedition down the Mississippi River. And thanks to his connections to his well-known family members, he was able to secure a naval captaincy. Willing went to Fort Pitt, gathered his forces, and bought a ship called the Rattletrap. Willing sailed away from Fort Pitt on January 10, 1778. Soon after, he stole cargo from French traders. James Willing would recruit more people as he went down the river. He would also steal loot that probably belonged to British loyalists. I don't think they had a way to verify. The expedition reached Natchez by February 19th. The town was undefended, and James Willing easily convinced the locals to stay neutral in the war. And also, they should give his men provisions. And also, all single men in the town should join his force. That we will not in any fashion take arms against the United States of America, nor help to supply, nor give any assistance to the enemies of said states. That our persons, slaves, and other property of whatever description shall be left secure and the least molestation during our neutrality. This treaty did not apply to British public officials, whose slaves and property would be stolen. Some buildings would even be burned, and loyalists captured and brought onto the Rattletrap as prisoners. One resident of Natchez wrote, "Captain Willing conceived of the design of making his fortune at one coup upon the ruins and destruction of his old friends and intimates. His chief reason was that he had by his folly squandered a fortune upon the river, and 'twas there he ought to repair it. In order to effect this, his hellish purpose, he recruited and collected together on his way down all the vagabonds and rascals he met with, of which kind the river is always full." The next town Willing was going to hit was Banshik. Unlike Natchez, this town was guarded by a British sloop called the Rebecca. Would this be a problem? No, the Rebecca was easily taken, and would be much more helpful than harmful in Willing's campaign. Willing's crew raided the town, and after this raid, Willing was left with a whole lot of stuff. So he decided to make a pit stop at New Orleans to sell this loot and buy provisions. Now at the time, New Orleans was owned by Spain. Spain really didn't like the British, so they were willing to support the Americans, which they had been doing by secretly providing supplies. So when James Willing showed up, the New Orleans governor, Bernardo de Galvez, let him into New Orleans. Although Galvez was a supporter of the revolution, Spain didn't want to go to war with Britain just yet, so he made Willing free the loyalists he captured and release the slaves to their masters. Willing could liquidate his assets in New Orleans as long as he didn't bring too much attention to himself. But Galvez won't let him buy provisions to continue on his expedition. Unfortunately, allowing Willing into New Orleans would be enough to attract British attention. A British sloop showed up and demanded for their stolen property to be returned, which some of it was. The British also retook Natchez. Willing sent a detachment to retake Natchez. However, the sort of people Willing had recruited throughout the journey cared less for the American cause, nor for treasure! So they just ransacked English plantations, and also people neutral in the war, including Spaniards. Willing then sent another detachment to make sure that Natchez was making good on their promise to remain neutral. But when the Natchez residents learned about this, they thought the detachment was coming to ransack their town as well, so they ambushed the Americans at White Cliffs. In response, the Americans ran back to New Orleans. Galvez was not happy about any of this. The governor asked Oliver Pollock, an American agent and financier of Willing's voyage in New Orleans, to end Willing's service. Pollock then wrote to the Congress, "The small party you sent here under the command of Captain James Willing, without any order of subordination, has only thrown the whole river into confusion and created a number of enemies and a heavy expense, which would not have happened had they been otherwise governed, and a proper number sent. However, the only remedy for what has passed is a speedy dispatch." Pollock did get around 60 of Willing's men to leave, and the Rebecca would sail into the Gulf of the Gulf of America. The ship sunk, by the way. Eventually in October, Oliver Pollock got Willing the money to sail back to Philadelphia. While he was trying to do that, the British captured him and locked him up. He tried to escape, and then they locked him up in solitary confinement, where the British would beat him. George Washington actually asked Congress to do a prisoner exchange to free James Willing. Should there be no naval officer of Captain Willing's rank who has a prior right of exchange, I shall be very glad to see his affected, as he has been peculiarly severely treated by the enemy. In 1781, James Willing was freed. I don't know what he did after this except die in 1801.